thank you so much for coming to talk to us today.
No
Obviously, we wanted to kick the series off with a local expert and someone who is known very well in the area, and for you in particular, talking about finance and home loans and things like that.
Yeah, no dramas at all. The finance industry's changed quite a lot, over the last 12 months. There's always changes in our industry, but there's definitely been a lot of changes over the last 12 months, which I'm sure people that you're talking to daily are seeing as well.
Yeah, the spotlight is on the banks these days, which keeps things interesting.
Absolutely.
And I guess they're almost taking it out on people trying to get themselves a loan to get a new home, which can obviously add to the challenges of people getting pre-approval or just getting approval in general.
Yeah, look, there is. There's a Royal Commission at the moment, as we know. Banks are obviously making adjustments to their lending policies off the back of that Royal Commission. We see a lot of positives in that, where lenders are obviously changing things nearly weekly at the moment, where we believe buyers or any client looking for finance these days, they should be talking to a broker and at least getting some advice around what their choices are. There's over 3,500 products on our lending panel these days, and there's a lot of choice for customers, and where one bank might say that they can't help because of whatever reasons, I'm sure there's another bank there that will have an opportunity there for those particular clients to look at further.
Yeah,
It's good
sure.
to know. And in terms of timeframes, how soon should a buyer be approaching you in relation to getting approval?
Yeah, good question. We believe that all buyers, before they even go to the market, should be at least sitting down with a broker or their bank, at least having a chat about their finance options, getting pre-approval before they actually go to an open home, being on the front foot, because we all know these days that if they're on the front foot, they can make their offer with better finance terms as well, knowing that they've already been pre-approved with the bank based on advice that they've received.
Yeah. No, it's definitely something that we find challenging when people have come into an open home, they love the place, they want to put an offer in, and finance clauses are something they haven't even spoken to anyone, so there's the challenge. They don't even know how much they can borrow, which is obviously a real challenge. Yeah,
look, and we see a lot of clients too that they go to market, make an offer, sign a contract, and in 14 days' time their bank comes back to them and says, look, we can't help for whatever reason, and then they get that business referred to us, and then we end up finding them a solution in most cases, but it's an extension of finance timeframes, and that can inconvenience a lot of people, especially the vendors, if they're trying to line up the sale of their house with the purchase of another house as well. It's a domino effect that we find. So definitely a pre-approval is an important factor in a client's buying process.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a far more powerful position, as you've touched on, for a buyer to come to us ready to go.
Absolutely.
In terms of challenges that you've mentioned, what are some new challenges that are more recent that you're seeing buyers face?
Yeah, look, there's a big talking point at the moment on customers' living expenses. So banks these days, credit managers, are looking at what people are spending over the course of the 3 months prior to an application being approved. So they're really sort of narrowing down on the cost of living, and they're asking us to vet bank statements and ensure that we're having that conversation with customers these days as well. And it's really just that sort of talking point around, can a customer afford the repayments on that loan going forward? So there's a number of changes that are happening in the market at the moment with different lenders. And look, every lender, I'll remind you, every lender at the moment has a different view on how they adapt to this living expense piece that, again, is off the back of the Royal Commission. But so if one bank says no, they can't help for whatever reason, especially with living costs as a talking point, get them to call us and we'll have a chat to them, because there's plenty of other options out there.
Wow.
That's interesting. So vetting living expenses. So you're going back to things like how often they online shop, things like that, and I guess takeaway food and
all of that stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of discretionary spending. Look, and I suppose the big thing for us is that every customer has spending habits, but those spending habits can be changed as well. And there's a lot of discretionary spending, which we all know, and we all have discretionary spends. So it's our responsibility, I suppose, to have that conversation with the clients around their spending habits and what the banks are looking for, in terms of the approval process.
Yeah, sure. One of the things that I found, I'm invested in the Sydney market at the moment, and one of the things that I was sort of told through the grapevine is that banks look really closely at your credit card limit. Yes. So if you get all the approval, they send through the pre-approvals to up your limit from 6,000 to 10,000 to 12,000.
Yep.
The banks will jump on that straight away and basically say that's a risk. Is that actually correct?
Look, it can be. Again, it depends on the bank. But a credit card limit, so like for example, a $10,000 credit card limit, even though you mightn't use the full extent of that credit card per month, you might even pay it out monthly. That 10,000 credit card limit will take around about 3 to 4 times the limit of someone's borrowing capacity. So again, just a small adjustment of credit card limit might mean that that customer can borrow the extra money that they need to be able to get approval for that house that they're looking to buy. So just small little tweaks. So I mean, it's important for us to have that conversation piece around credit card limits, any other expenditure patterns as well, obviously cost of living, to get that finance approved for that customer. There's many different aspects involved.
That's amazing.
A little bit off what we've already been talking about, but I'm finding buyers, especially younger people, are nervous around auctions because the idea of bidding unconditionally. So is there a difference between getting ready for an auction, so pre-approval, and pre-approval for purchasing subject to finance?
Yeah, look, I mean, going to auctions obviously got different complexities, I suppose. Obviously put their hand up, they're unconditional on the day, and they've got to pay normally a deposit as well, within a day or two. Look, the bigger the deposit that the buyer has, the safer it is for them to go to auction. And it's the same process as we mentioned before about the pre-approval. We still get customers to come in, we go through the pre-approval process, we use the bank that's going to fully assess the client's application. A lot of banks don't fully assess pre-approval, so it's just a system-generated pre-approval. So they go to auction on that pretense, and then an application then goes to the actual credit manager should they be unconditional after auction, and then they get declined. So it's So look, unfortunately, there's a lot of that stuff that happens as well. So our advice is always, if you're going to auction, come and see us first. We'll go through the pre-approval process, and we'll use a bank that's going to actually physically go through your file, check your pay slips, check your conduct on accounts, etc. Issue the pre-approval on the back of that. And then we have that sort of conversation around, okay, what deposit do you have as well? Because the smaller the deposit, if they've only got anywhere from a 5 to a 15% deposit, the mortgage insurers normally don't approve them until after a contract signed. So there's always that element of risk as well that the mortgage insurers may have a problem at the back end. We normally don't see it, but we've still got to have that conversation with the buyer just so they're prepared.
That's interesting. So I guess the message there is auctions don't have to be daunting for younger or whoever, as long as they are prepared and I guess really open with their broker about their plans moving forward and wanting to bid at auction.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, don't ever be nervous about going to auction. There's always avenues that we can take, and again, there's 41 banks on our panel, 3,500 products. So there's going to be opportunity there, and it's just a matter of the conversation piece that we have with the customer, that's right for them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Nice. That's
Awesome.
a very good question. I guess wind it back into the Sunshine Coast. One of the things I guess that we've been looking at and that excites us about the Sunshine Coast is the level of investment and infrastructure coming into the Sunshine Coast. Obviously, we're not really all in a position to talk about the level of investment for property, personal residential property. But what do you think all this development is going to bring to the coast? The broadband, submarine cable, we're talking the CBD, we're talking light rail lines. Like, where do you see the Sunshine Coast going these days, Colin?
Oh, look, I mean, what we look at is customers that we might have looked after 5 or 6 years ago. What did they buy that house for back then, and what's their value right now of that property? And we're seeing values have increased over the last 5 to 6 years. And then customers are able to use that equity if they want to go and then further invest into an area which is booming at the moment, let's face it. And why wouldn't you invest here? It's the Sunshine Coast. And look, and I think we'll see more people from down south, Sydney and Melbourne, and we're talking to them. I know, no doubt you're talking to them as well. They're moving here, and that'll provide further growth to the Sunshine Coast as well. But there's plenty of good developments happening, and they'll be happening for many years to come. Yeah,
definitely. No, we're definitely getting phone calls, people flying up for the weekend from Melbourne and Sydney, just literally with a checklist of things they want to buy a property up here. So it feels like the excitement is definitely getting south these days, which is
absolutely
great.
Look, and I think that'll continue to happen too. Look, and we're in a fairly good banking environment, if you ask me. Look, I know there's a lot of I suppose negativity is a word, not that I like to use that much, but there's always positive stuff happening here on the Sunshine Coast. And look, and where the lenders are making it a little bit tougher, there's plenty of opportunity. You just have to get the advice and don't go and see one person or a bank and be fooled into thinking you can't get money. Give a broker a go, test us out, and I'm sure we can help.
Yeah, for sure.
So I guess you've sort of summed up why people should come and talk to you, but is there any other reasons or any other benefits to come and see you versus talking to a bank?
Other than being a great bloke, of course.
Thank you. Look, I mean, we provide choice at the end of the day. I mean, as I've already mentioned, 41 banks and over 3,500 products. And our job's really to provide that service that's different to the bank. It's a family business. I mean, John and myself own the business. We've got families ourselves that are here on the Sunshine Coast. Our kids go to school here. We live and breathe the area. So I think that's an important thing. We've got 25 staff in our office as well that are designed to help a client through the process of not just getting approval, but even post-settlement. We're still in touch with our customers so that we're always making sure that they're on the better product going forward and they're not paying too much in terms of interest rates and fees, etc. So
that's interesting. How often would you keep in touch with your clients, your past clients?
Definitely monthly. There's a database that goes out to our clients, like newsletters, etc., per month. But every year, once a year, we're actually physically picking up the phone and talking to them as well if we haven't spoken to them already throughout that year. So
yeah, to make sure that they've got the best deal, as you said before, or just is.
Yeah, just checking in with them. Yeah, just touching base, checking in with them, making sure they're happy. Looking at me, and even seeing how the kids are going at school. For example, getting to know our customers a little bit better throughout the course of our relationship.
So that is definitely different than a bank. So.
We'd like to think it is. So absolutely. So
get sent through to a hot desk somewhere in Melbourne, somewhere if you like.
Or overseas. So there you go. So
talk to our local customer care team.
And look, and we're seeing a lot of that at the moment. Like the branches are shutting down. I was in Stippy Downs on the weekend, and 2 of the branches that used to be there are now shutting down. There's for lease signs up in the branches. So that just goes to, and they're major banks. So it just goes to show that they're stepping away, a lot of the bigger banks, from having branches. And where I think that will head is that the mortgage brokers and financial advisors, etc., accountants even, will be the distribution channel for the banks moving forward, is our belief. So yeah, good for us. And hopefully we can recruit more staff as well, which will then add to some employment opportunities on the Sunshine Coast. So yeah.
Excellent, Colin. Well, thank you so much for speaking to us today. Obviously, we would love to see the people of the Sunshine Coast come to us for any of their real estate needs, and I think you've kind of nailed it on the head with why SMS Finance is a great spot to come to for any finance needs. So yeah, mate, thanks, and we'll wrap it up today, and we will catch you around the place, I'm sure.
Yeah, thank you again for the opportunity. I appreciate it, and as I always say, test us out. So.